Hello YouTube! Until yesterday I had no clue what kind of video I would make for today. Luckily I can always browse a bit of Reddit and ask around. A very nice guy asked me what certain types of equipment did, and hey, don't we all sometimes wonder for ourselves? So this guide will focus on what equipment is, when you can use it, and what you should use for which kind of ship. Also, I'm gonna show you which ones you can totally ignore. So enough of the intro, let's start. So what is equipment and where can you find it? Equipment consists basically of modifications to parts of your ship which changes the behavior of them. In most cases it will give a slight buff, in certain cases it is practically useless, and in some unique cases it is actually a nerf to your ship. So where can you find it? In your port, go to the modules tab and there you can find the upgrade section. Going there, depending on the tier, you have a certain amount of slots. So let's go to the tech tree and see on which tiers you can unlock which slots. When starting with the game, you will only have access to slot 1. You would expect to get access to slot 2 now, but we have some Russian logic going on here. At ships from tier 3 and higher, you have access to slot 4. When you reach tier 5, slot 2 gets unlocked, and quickly after that, at tier 6, slot 5 is available to you. Only for the players that have spent quite some time into the game and reached tier 8, the modifications of slot 6 can be used. At tier 9, slot 3 finally is available to you. Now I will discuss what is useful and useless for the different kind of ships. As we have different kind of classes, I made a table of contents here, and you can just click on it to skip to the part which is useful for you. During the whole video you can always go back to here via a link in the video. So make sure you have your annotations on and let's proceed. Keep in mind that this is a general guide and it will be right in most of the cases. However, there are some special cases this guide will not cover. Always check for yourself if it's a logical choice you're making. Within this section I'm gonna start with the choices of slot 1 and progress all the way towards tier 9 where slot 3 will be finally unlocked. It's still weird. For carriers there's only one decent modification, which is Air Group's modification 1, which increases the effectiveness of your aircraft guns. At slot 4, Damage Control System modifications 1 should be your choice. You want to minimize the chances of fire. At slot 2, there are two decent options, but I would advise Flight Control modification 1. This is in all situations useful, while Air Group's modification 2 is only useful depending on certain conditions. At slot 5, go for Damage Control System modification 2. It basically lowers the time you're on fire or flooding. The other choices are just not useful for carriers. At slot 6, there's actually no choice at all. Go for Consummate System modification 1. It lowers your detectability. Target Acquisition System modification 1 is basically a useless equipment. It gives you an increase in render range. At slot 3, go for Air Group's modification 3. It increases your torpedo and dive bomber survivability. This is always useful, while Flight Control modification 2 is dependent on the situation you're in. Battleships. For battleships at slot 1, I would advise Main Battery modification 1. Your guns are your only damage, so keep them alive and also keep yourself alive. Slot 4 should be filled with Damage Control System modification 1. Fire and flooding are big damage dealers, so decreasing the chance on them is always beneficial to you. On slot 2, go for Gunfire Control System modification 1. This increases your accuracy when firing. Warning, do not go for Main Battery modification 2. This is a trade-off. Your batteries turn slower because of this, not faster. At slot 5, go for Damage Control System Modification 2. Again, we are decreasing the damage done by fires and floodings. Slot 6, a no-brainer. I don't even know why Target Acquisition System Modification 1 is in the game. Concealment System Modification 1 is your choice. At slot 3, go for Gunfire Control System Modification 2. More range always comes in handy, while Main Battery Modification 3 is again a trade-off. Cruisers. Cruisers can have multiple roles, so be advised that in this section of the whole guide, multiple options can be a good choice. In this section, I'm giving the advice that my choices are focused on the general player population and not so on specific playstyle captains can have adopted. For cruisers at slot 1, I would advise Main Battery Modification 1. Whether you are in a Japanese or US cruisers, guns are your main damage. At slot 4, I would go for Damage Control System Modification 1. I personally think that the reduction of fire and flooding risk is worth more than having your engine or steering knocked out. Both of those do not happen that often to me. At slot 2, you have two good choices. You could either go for Gunfire Control System Modification 1, which increases your accuracy, or you can go for AA Modification 2. This choice here will depend on your playstyle. If you're playing purely on your guns, go for the guns. If you play more as a multi-purpose support vessel, go for the AA. At slot 5, I personally go for Damage Control System Modification 2. Flooding and especially fire can wreck your ship. You do not have the health pool to deal with multiple of them. In my opinion, the other two modifications are helping players with not that strong of a situational awareness. They can be good, but I wouldn't advise them. Slot 6, again a no-brainer. Concealment Modification 1. The other one is just useless. Don't think about it. And the final one, slot 3, has much in common with your choice at slot 2. Again, two good choices, and depending on your preferred role as a cruiser, you should choose. Gunfire Control System Modification 2 is a strong choice for damage dealers, and AA Modification 3 is a good choice for the multi-purpose support playing style. US Destroyers. Destroyers from the US tech tree can be played either as a gunboat, a torpedo boat, or a combination of these styles. From tier 8 and onwards, your concealment is better than your torpedo range, so keep this in mind with the equipment guide. At slot 1, if you play like a gunboat, go for Main Battery Modification 1. If you focus on doing damage by torpedoes, go for Torpedo Tube Modification 1. On slot 4, a lot of players choose Propulsion Modification 1. However, I disagree with this. If your engine gets knocked out, you can always steer your ship with the speed that you still have to a safer region and use a smokescreen to conceal yourself and to wait it out. To protect yourself, you could fire some torpedoes, so they have to keep their distance. However, if your steering gets knocked out, this is not the case. Controlling your ship while remaining in the smoke is way more difficult. Not getting shot at is, in my opinion, more important than being difficult to shoot at. So I choose Steering Gears Modification 1. At slot 2, the option is again between being a gunboat or a torpedo boat. Focusing on a role as a gunboat, go for Gunfire Control System Modification 1. If torpedoes are your thing and not being detected by hovering planes, AA Guns Modification 2 can save you in a lot of cases. However, only choose this modification if your destroyer has decent AA. Progressing towards slot 5, and I recommend Steering Gears Modification 2. Dodging shells and making insane turns to shotgun an enemy with your torpedoes becomes way more easier with this modification. I hardly ever stand still or lose a tremendous amount of speed, So for me, propulsion modification 2 is just not worth it. Finally, at slot 6, an easy choice. Go for that concealment. At slot 3, I always choose torpedo tubes modification 3. At these tiers, the reload of your torpedo tubes is insanely long. I play my destroyers as ninjas, so I barely get shot at. The trade-off is, with my playing style, not a trade-off. When I'm playing it correctly, I get the benefit of a shorter torpedo reload. If you do not play your USDD like a ninja on tier 9 and 10, you can always go either for Gunfire Control System Modification 2 or AA Guns Modification 3. Japanese destroyers. Destroyers from the IGN tech tree can, in my opinion, only be played correctly if you play it like a ninja. So these modifications will be pretty specific for that playing style. On slot 1, go for Torpedo Tubes Modification 1. These are your only damage dealers, so go for it. On slot 4, go for Steering Gears Modification 1. Having control over my ship and guiding it correctly with the last of my speed into a smokescreen is, in my opinion, more important than driving around in circles and not being in a smokescreen. At slot 2, I choose AA Guns Modification 2. I rarely use my guns, and shooting down a plane that detects me within the air detection range is worth more to me than a little bit of more of the accuracy on my guns. At slot 5, equip Steering Gears Modification 2. With the reduction in rudder shift time, you can dodge the enemy shells easier if you get spotted, and it is also pretty useful when you want to torpedo shotgun an enemy in the face. I hardly ever stand still or lose a tremendous amount of speed in turns, so the other modification is not worth it for me. Slot 6 again, a no-brainer. Go for that concealment. You are a ninja. At slot 3, go for Torpedo Tubes Modification 3. Again, you are a ninja. You should never be shot at, especially on these high tiers. When you are not getting shot at, the trade-off is not a trade-off. You will only get a faster reload on those torpedoes. With having said all of that, time for the giveaway assignment. To be part in the giveaway coming Sunday, you need to do 2 things. One of those is, of course, be my subscriber. I actually need to know you. The second is to leave a comment in the section and tell me what you're struggling with in World of Warships and what kind of guide you think should be next. And that's all about it. See you on the ocean.